All right, everyone. We are here with Luxury Live, Galileo's feature on both the artists and the brands that are hosted on our luxury marketplace. Um, it's brands that have decided to add an element of technology to their repertoire, and whether it's artwork or handbags or anything of that nature, they've decided to step into the world of Web3, and so the purpose of this interview is to have a little behind the scenes of what goes on with the artist or brand that has ventured into this Web3 space. So I'm Zach Atkins with Galileo. I handle all of our day-to-day strategic operations, and it's my privilege to get to have David Borrington join me today. He's one of our artists that's featured on our luxury asset marketplace, and in order to do it justice well, I'm going to hand the microphone over to David to introduce himself and um, share a little bit about his kind of backstory. So go ahead, David.
Thank you. I'm David Borrington. I'm an artist based in the UK. And firstly, I studied at the Royal College of Art in London for my master's. Previous to that, I did a degree in fine art printmaking as well. So I did about 7 years of art education before becoming a full-time artist, and that would have been in 2008, I think that was.
Awesome. And so let's we're gonna get into the artwork. I love I've spent some time zooming in on the pieces that, well, some of the pieces you have, some of them aren't, as the your recent works that you've listed are a little bit less detailed.
That's
And
right.
actually, I'll pull up the screen, so that people can see in a second, but or maybe a little bit further in the interview. But we're going to get into that and kind of the fun political statements that makes. But first, I'm curious. So you went to school to study art and fine art. Uh, uh, what was David Borrington like as a kid? Were you always kind of on that art track? What sort of first drew you to the art world?
Well, fortunately, I was quite severely dyslexic. Well, I still am. So I went to special school, so I couldn't read or write at all. So obviously, when you can't read or write, you naturally start drawing and trying to get all those ideas out of your brain and into something like a paper form. Otherwise, your head go completely crazy. So obviously, drawing from a very young age, and obviously that's an obvious step to go into my further education.
So, at what point did you realize? Because I'll being fully transparent, although I have a lot of thoughts in my head, I don't have the skill to put them into pictures on a page and create what would be considered, I guess, good artwork. You have that skill. So at what point did you realize that, hey, I think I'm pretty good at this. I want to actually pursue this as a a hobby, or advancing to a career. What was kind of the tipping point where you realized that, hey, I'm pretty good at this?
And, I won a photographic competition when I was 10, a national competition. So that's when I bought my first camera. So I beat quite a lot of people with that. But to be honest, it's one thing I've always did. So it wasn't a question of was I going to do it. It always was just I am doing it.
Mm-hmm.
There was no linear thought.
Sure,
It
sure.
was the thing what I did. I think that's the same with a lot of artists, and we just know we are artists, and we couldn't even think about doing anything else. So it wasn't a question of being something; it was we already are. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like
no,
musicians.
it makes a lot of sense. So the I guess it's fun because my um I guess more kind of linear progression brain thinks through it in that way, but it's fun to get to hear kind of more of an artist perspective, where you're like, that's kind of a silly question, because that's just something that's innate in my nature, and something that I was just have always done. So I know that kind of the traditional um, uh, path for people is that more linear progression of, hey, what's something I like to do? What am I going to do to make money? Um, and
Yeah,
then
I'm
more on the
very good.
artist side, you're like, this is how I've always been good at this. It just makes sense, like that I'm here, pursuing art and going to school for art. Um, so
Obviously,
if you don't, go
I
ahead.
chose the right universities to go to get me to those higher universities. So it was a conscious decision to go to certain places and study under certain people to get me the places where I wanted to get to.
Hmm. So
So, for example,
who is one of those artists that maybe you sought to embody, or that was kind of an inspiration to your artwork?
when I was at the Royal College, my professor was Professor Chris Orr. He was an RA. He does a lot of satirical political work as well. And I think he was one of the first artists to draw the house inside the House of Parliament with all the active sitting people. And I think it was in the 1970s. I think that this was where he had to go outside of the House of Parliament because you weren't allowed to take a sketchbook in. So you had to go outside and remember who were sitting where, and went back in and did that over the whole day to get the 200 and something people who was in the House of Commons in that day. And it was the first drawing ever taken with the correct people where they were sitting. So
Wow.
he's one of
So
the people I studied under.
so that's really fun insight into the kind of creative process, or what he had to do in order to get
Because you weren't allowed to
his
take anything in into the
man. That
public.
Yeah. So have you done any specific artwork like that where you um like, are you allowed to take anything in now?
Yeah, I think you've already got cameras in now, haven't you? I don't think film cameras were in. All the TV stuff's filmed
Mhm.
live, isn't it now? So I don't know when that actually came into play. Um, I just know Chris's etching was one of the first pictures where it was done like that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Um do you have, because you're specialize in this kind of political satire.
Very
um
English.
yeah, yeah. So what got you uh interested in pursuing that kind of form, or that genre of artwork?
I think you can laugh or you can cry with these with what's what's happening at the moment. So I think if you make a drawing about it, it clears your head, and especially with art, like visual artwork, especially you can have like a picture. Then you have so much things happening at once. Your brain can sort of balance it all out and sort of visualize it like a time zone over one drawing, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So you can sort of work out. You can portray a story over, let's say, a whole week in one instance. And I think that's what drawing can do over, let's say, over digital artworks.
Hmm.
If that makes
So
sense.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'll pull up an image where we can see kind of some of the artwork, so that the audience can get a glimpse into, if they haven't already viewed your artwork, they can see kind of what you're describing as this kind of this canvas, almost, and I mean this in the best way, this canvas of chaos where there's a ton of things happening, and then it forces you to kind of pick your spot, zoom in, look at something a little bit more closely. Oh, who's that person, that's depicted, and or what's that image saying? So I've done that, and that's why I can describe that experience, because it's very interesting, and I love the
Yeah, the Punch
art
and
that
Judy
makes
one
you
would be
think.
quite a good one to do.
What's that?
Punch and Judy's drawing is quite a good one for that because that's
Yeah,
over quite
yeah.
a lot of
Yeah,
different
so
things.
we'll show some of that off in a second. I'm curious about your process as an artist. So kind of, you have this educational background. You have kind of your inspiration for this type of artwork. What is when David Borrington is gonna create a new piece? What does that process look like? how do you sort the thoughts in your head versus what goes down on paper, or whatever the canvas that you use. uh, Treat me as ignorant on the art world, and so get into details like your if it's charcoal sketching, or whatever and I know some of that information is actually in the metadata of our pNFTs,
Yeah.
but yeah, get into those. What does it look like when you are going to sit down and create a piece of art?
Well, with my work, it's all in my head really. So dyslexic, so there's ability to sort of like put some information here, put some information, and it's all over the place, and we can sort of bring it all together into the drawing. So we can bring we have a sort of how to explain it, a memory which is sort of scattered, doesn't not in linear. So we can bring in
Mhm.
information from, I don't know, Bill Gates doing something in 1995 to him doing something today, and they've sort of been brought together in my memory. So I sort of when I'm thinking about things, it's sort of like it's all across all of my memory. So I got a very good long term memory, but my short term memory is shockingly bad. So I remember things like 10 years ago. If I walk into the supermarket now, for example, I won't remember what's on the shelf. But you ask me 2 weeks later, I can tell you where things are precisely.
Mhm.
So we have a very sort of scattered memory. So we pull those memories into one piece of work, and that's why there's so much layering into the drawing. So even when I look back at the drawings, I forget. Oh, I put that in it. Oh, that makes sense. So I forget what I put in my own drawings half the time because they basically big essays being squashed down into sort of like a drawing. That's the best
Mhm.
way to sort of explain. Very similar to the Japanese method, where with their scrolls when they're doing their stories, they use a lot of layering and sort of like they use closed doors and corridors in their buildings to show different time zones and all sorts of different things in their
Mhm.
famous battle scrolls.
Yeah, and I saw something of in doing some research for this. I saw that you'll probably be able to articulate this in a better and different way. But
Maybe.
there's something like your brain is the way that your brain processes things is something that only 0.02% of the population can do.
That's
Is
right.
that right?
Yeah,
Did I read that correctly?
that's the on the IQ test. They test you for your visual connections. So they normally give you like 6 objects and then ask you to spot the odd one out. And we're just very good at that. So that's basically what that means. So we can
Okay.
analyze
Okay.
imagery very quick.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting fact. It's always kind of fun to be more to have your brain think in a unique way. It can be maybe sometimes difficult to fit into society in a normal
Yeah,
context, but it's something that makes you incredibly unique, and that is um, uh, although it could potentially be a liability, it's also a huge strength, and it allows you to stand out. Just I think it's fun to understand how people's brains operate, and how you process things. So you said you could either laugh or cry with some of the like without ironically getting too political.
yeah. Especially
There's
like
a
in
lot of stuff
America.
going on in the world. Like it's and I'm a huge fan of comedy, so I love that kind of there's no holds barred with comedians. Y- that's your that's where people have been given permission to just kind of even though their brain processes things in a fun and interesting way, it gives people the freedom to express the like maybe something that's a dark side of the world
Yeah,
in a put some humor on it and add some laughter, as opposed to crying. And kind of the same thing with artists. You have the ability to clearly and concisely communicate something with a piece of art, um, as opposed to getting crying about it, and it adds some flair to something that might be a more serious matter, and it adds some fun to it. So you've got all these thoughts in your head. When you're gonna sit down and do what does the creative process look like for you? So do you take do you draw kind of like a couple images at a time and then leave it and then come back to it? Do you sit down in like a long session and you're like, I've got all the thoughts in my head. I'm gonna draw exactly what comes to mind. Do you do it inside? Do you do it outside? Um, what is kind of the nitty gritty of like you know conducting an artwork?
So it's all very varied. Depends what's happening at the time. But like these Punch and Judy series were just done on my iPad. So I sketched them out first on the iPad and develop the drawing on top of to build layers up,
Hmm.
making more and more detail. Throwing in different elements, I guess, bringing in, trying them. If they don't work, I take them out. Um, Playing with scale, playing with depth of field, just different things like that, really. And like sometimes I may do a whole drawing and just leave it for, like you said, maybe for a whole month or so, then come back to it and go, oh, it needs this, or oh, I forgot about this bit of what happened in, I don't know, some sort of political event. Then I need to
Hmm.
go back into the drawing because obviously you forget about things and things pop up again after 6 months because the mainstream media start reporting on it. So you sort of pick up on it again.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, not,
Go ahead.
yeah. So normally about, I don't know, 3 months or so for drawing, in not drawing all the time on it, but delving into it ever so often and trying to get my head around certain elements. Obviously, the Punch and series is 19 drawings with very precise elements of the pandemic. So obviously, you can't swerve too much off the particular drawing I'm working on because of the other drawings will have those elements as well. So it's balanced in 19 drawings and trying to get the whole story across
Hmm.
19 pictures.
Yeah, and so do you with when you have hear something in the mainstream media, and let's say it's first introduced, it's whatever event has taken place, but it's not something that's like kind of a final type event. Do you usually wait until so let's say I'm trying to think of an example. um well, for me, it's top of mind because I'm based in the U.S., so I guess a large portion of the media is centered around the
Right.
U.S. politics and what's going on. So, we'll use the recent Trump assassination or attempt.
Not
Um,
too
so
for
like
that.
that happened in a single day, but then there's been follow up. There's been there's still
Still
congressional
investigating.
hearings and cases, and a lot of like the I'd say truth behind the scenes of what actually happened that day has yet to be revealed. So if you're going to do a piece of art on that, do you wait until the like kind of hearings have been completed and everything before you put it onto a piece, or do you
I think
is
if
it
I
kind
was
of a
going to,
progression?
yeah, so if I was going to do that piece now, it'd be very different to how I was going to do it in 6 months' time, if that's what you're sort
Mhm,
of asking. So it'd be a very different drawing because obviously you have more information and different things would have appeared. Um, and when the Secret Service releases their files, that's going to be completely different as well in
mhm.
another 50 years of that one. So, but yes.
So is that an
So
example of, like, something that you would, maybe put something into the iPad for, like, right after it happens, and then you go back, so you leave it, go back 6 months later or
yeah,
whenever,
yeah, I
and
have
then
lots of note. I've got like I use Evernote, so I have huge amounts of uh, ideas stored in there, ready for certain things. I keep on throwing stuff into those folders. Let's say I'm not, I haven't got one, but let's say it was Trump's assassination. I would keep on throwing in articles into that folder for that for me
mhm.
to review those, see what everyone was talking. Sometimes I may not even read the article. I may just throw it in to see read later.
Hmm.
So I have a huge amount of data stored in Evernote on certain political events from
Okay, very cool. Yeah.
all different sides, because obviously it's interesting how different sides are reporting on certain things,
Yeah, it is.
especially in the
The
US. Well, it's pretty bad here in the UK as well. So
I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so many directions that I could take that. I know, like, big critique, especially, we're with Galileo, we're in the world of crypto, and so, it, like, is a requirement to spend some time on Twitter, and then in crypto Twitter, that's where, right, it's become one of those platforms of free speech where there's not the same type of censorship, and like, good or bad. There's you're you have more of a platform where you can speak freely on items, and then I know that there's at least what's been communicated, through that, from what's going on in the UK versus the EU, and
oh yeah, with
it's sometimes hard to tell, okay, what's the truth behind it all. um so what how do you determine kind of what goes into that artwork versus what you exclude?
well, my sort of motto is pro bono. So who benefits is normally who did it. Uh, that's normally so hold off a little bit and see who benefits from it. So that's how I sort of decide, and sort of I guess I do filter out certain things which I don't think are that important. But even if I don't agree with certain elements, I may put them in because that's of other people's view on it. So I may put things I don't agree with into my drawings. It's quite
Mhm.
comical normally. That, but I guess it's my drawings are quite complex, so there's normally quite a lot of stuff in there. So it's hard to know what I didn't put in really. Normally, it's
Mhm.
just normally I've just forgotten about it or not important
Yeah.
for that for what I'm trying to say with that work.
So,
I
do
don't
you
know.
have any as far as uh, appearances in maybe galleries, or kind of what's your main distribution method for artwork? Do you host any events? Do you go to galleries with your artwork? What does that side of things look like?
Well, it's changed quite a lot since COVID. So before we had galleries, a lot of the galleries have closed down since COVID. So it's all basically online or collectors who I have already. That's how we normally sell work.
Hmm.
Basically, very much, and obviously like the digital stuff. A lot more artwork's being sold online now over the last 4 years than they had previously. But even then, when I was at art school back in 2000, I graduated in 2008. It's very much we got taught galleries was the way forward. But by the like most of my friends graduated a bit later than me in 2012 or 13, that they're already all website based.
Hmm.
So galleries are very So it's all in the last 15 years the art market changed dramatically in quite big chunks. So it's quite hard to keep up with all these changes. Compared with like if we were in the 90s or the 80s, you just had a gallerist, and they would just handle all the art, all the sales for you, and you don't need to do anything. But now we had to do it all ourselves.
Yeah, it's evolved a ton, in a very short period of time. So I can imagine it would be, it's somewhat probably difficult to, stay on top of keeping track of the news and what the media is projecting, to stay on top of kind of what's common practice in the world of art, and how is it shifting. And so do you have a particular like client demographic? Do you have some like common collectors who are, it's I have to have the David Borrington, the newest David Borrington piece? I'm curious about kind of what the client side of things look like.
So we have clients who, but yeah, buy like some of my clients buy particular numbers of my editions. So one of my clients really like the last number, and some like number
Mm.
three. I think one of my clients like number three for some. I don't know. No, there's no difference in the print. They're all the same quality, and they just like their particular numbers. Then I have
Hmm.
clients sold I sell a couple of prints to some Saudi Arabian princes when I make work about the Middle East. So they buy those sort of pieces. So like the Egyptian Revolution, I did a big piece for that, and I
Mm.
sold a few pieces to them. They obviously because they were involved in it, that's why they
Yeah.
wanted those. So yeah, it's all very different groups of people who buy the work. I do a political box set, which is a yearly thing. Then we have buyers who just always bought those. They're just the same people buying those pieces. So that's sort
So
of
how did you get connected with the Saudi Arabian princes?
they just as work in I had some work in the summer show in the academy, and they obviously saw it there. And
Mm.
that's when then we got in touch with them. But that's really odd working with them because they email you like they're out in wherever some big conference somewhere in the Middle East. So it's all quite they're all quite. And you've got a really odd postal address to send the artwork to.
I can imagine. No, it's so fun. Art is one of those things that it's it can resonate with anyone, and so you can get such a broad spectrum of buyers. And I was talking with some guys that host a gallery up in Florida where I'm located. um, and they were saying, we have clients that they'll have us load up a van of 10 pieces. We always bring 5 extra just in case they want um to buy a few extra. They'll take it to the property, and they're like, sometimes we go through a gated community that then leads to another gated community that you would have no idea exists. And they were telling me, we would have
Florida.
no idea these communities exist outside of us bringing the artwork and putting it in their home and displaying it so that they can see what it looks like in their house. And so it's it's very interesting, and kind of the doors that it opens, quite literally, I guess. um
Yeah.
and so that's really cool and fun to learn about. That there's some Saudi Arabian princes that buy the David Borrington pieces. I like that. That's really cool. So I want to. I'm always cognizant of time, and not that we are running low on time, but I want to make sure that we touch on some of the um, like you've mentioned technology being an important realm of your artwork. And you've mentioned platforms like Evernote and how you use the iPad to draw things out. um, so I'm curious though, what initially drew you to Web3 and kind of the world of pNFTs. Is that something that you had dabbled in before and were aware of before Galileo?
In, yeah, sort of indirect, sort of indirect. Because obviously I'm a political artist, so I look into political history quite a bit and sort of political banking history. So obviously banking history and digital currencies go sort of side by side. So the first time I read about this was a UN paper back in well, I probably read it in 2007 or 2006. There's a 2003 paper on the international currency of pips. I don't know if you know about this, but it was one of
No.
their first project to make a world currency, a digital currency, and that was back in 2003. That paper was written, and
Hmm.
so obviously I always thought it was quite anti it because obviously it was done by the UN. So but obviously later on you had like Bitcoin come along in 2010 or 12, I think that was. And obviously that shot off like crazy.
Hmm.
Then FMT, what's it called? NFTs. I sort of sit. Obviously, with political work, I always sit back a bit and wait to see what happens. And with FMTs, it was sort of like it was a free fall, wasn't it, for really bad artists to sell really expensive pieces. So that
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
a big bubble, which is obviously going to collapse at some point, which it obviously it did. But the pNFTs are obviously is locked to physical artwork, and that's what interested me in the Galileo Protocol. That
Hmm.
connection.
Yeah, that's the when I first heard about NFTs, that was the value that I could see was when it's actually tied to a physical piece, and you now have this kind of merging of the digital and the physical, and you have a way uh, to to verify that something is an authentic piece, um, but also this kind of things being this transparency on the blockchain. Um, that's kind of the initial utility for NFTs because I remember the NFT craze when um, you have overpriced profile pictures and the I'd say the artwork has evolved in the space, but there's still it's the more that I learn about the kind of ins and outs of the art world, the more I see that there's almost this kind of bastardization of uh art in the NFT realm and like kind of how it's been maligned from the traditional traditional world of art, whether it's how things are valued, or how they're displayed. So yeah, I mean it's we're in a place where I think maybe it's the traditional world and the NFT space are kind of evening out, or leveling out as far as kind of value and everything. But what uh, as far as you shared about when you first kind of were introduced to the idea of NFTs. What about you'll have to forgive me because I actually don't know what um, your first introduction to Galileo. How did you get connected to us and
I think it was on
ultimately get to
LinkedIn.
listing?
I think it was in LinkedIn. Um, the chaps invited me over for an interview. That was, and next thing I was signed up. That's how that worked. Yeah.
So yeah,
Obviously,
sometimes it's as
I read
simple
all
as
the legal paperwork from Switzerland, but yes, that
yeah,
was
exactly. That's
read all
the
that. It's good to me. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
good.
no. Well, we're glad to have you as an artist on the marketplace. I'm glad to get to talk about your artwork here. Um, uh, how do you envision the future of art, and maybe your art specifically, with this integration of physical NFT technology. Like, what is do you envision your artwork um, kind of shifting at all? Like, kind of what are some of the benefits that you see to this Web3 technology?
Well, the way I like to see it would be everyone has like a digital screen or some sort, like the Samsung Frame TV or an equal thing, and then the people buy traditional artwork like from the system, but then they can archive the artwork properly, keeping it nice and safe, which is a better investment. Then they can view the artwork on the screens, and they can change on a daily basis. Or with my work, because they could sign up to, let's say, a monthly thing, and they could receive a new current affairs picture for the month. Then they get the original piece in the post to put into their archive box or whatever the system they have. So they build up their art collection. At the same time, they can just change it on the walls whenever they like. So if they got something a
Mhm.
bit, they don't have a party, they want it to be too political, they can change the work pretty quick. So that's
Yeah,
how I
the
see it. It's interesting because, like, if you even go back to like early William Morris, in his art lectures, he quite often spoke about the idea. This is obviously not pre-digital, but the idea of print and original painting. So, like a print will be selling for somewhere like nowadays £1,000 to £2,000, and a painting £7,000 to £10,000 in that region. So, if you can get like 5 or 10 prints for the price of one painting. So
mhm.
that's what he always introduced, that people should be buying prints, not paintings. And obviously he introduced all the wallpaper printing stuff and made wallpapers cheaper for people to have. And he actually, the accent wall, where you put one wall of very expensive wallpaper. That was the William Morris concept.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so you can afford a little bit of nice wallpaper in your house, and people can afford nice prints compared to spending maybe $10,000-$20,000 on a painting
Hmm.
of equal standard anyway.
Yeah,
So
that's
this
very
was
interesting. Yeah.
so
I know
you can
that
build
a
it.
lot of people will uh man, I guess there's a couple different perspectives on that, because the there's a uniqueness to the actual painting versus the print, and so it's kind of I
Oh
guess
no, the
the
print. Well, we work in original print, which Queen Victoria acknowledged it was all original because we make them from the plate. So there's no other
Mhm.
artwork. So the all original prints are just split. The editions are split. That's
Sure.
the only difference. But yes, that's why painting is £10,000, not 1,000.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
They just splitting the cost. Really, that's all that is. But all original works. There's no potential, no hierarchy
Mhm.
of art, unless you're talking about reproductions of paintings. So if you take a photograph of a painting, then make that into print, that's a reproduction. That's not original print. That's
Mhm.
where a lot of confusion happens. So the people would like in these art galleries, they got paintings which are prints, and they're saying limited edition of 100, but they aren't original prints. These are replicas of a painting, sold as limited edition prints, and that's where the confusion happens. So these prints behind me here, these are all original prints. So this is they all are one of like 16 or 32 or
Mhm.
something like that.
Is that something that you as an artist have experienced, that people have tried to sell uh, your artwork as their own, or
Not what I'm aware of.
well, hopefully they don't. Now that they know about the Saudi Arabian princes, maybe
Yeah.
I hope that we can, we've been proactive with, now there's a PNFT attached to it, so that people can't do it. But now that I think that's out in the world, maybe there'll be some some more interest in attempting. But yeah, I mean it's interesting with various artists who has dealt with things like counterfeiting and who hasn't. I think a lot of um, the counterfeiting might be more of the uh, kind of worldwide names for artists, and but you never know. Like, even there's have you ever seen the movie? I think it's called Big Eyes. It's about an artist who she well, it's kind of a comedy. It's mainly about the husband, and he is has incredible success selling artwork, and the artwork is known for the big eyes that like sad, happy, whatever, the expression in the big eyes of the painting, they're just extremely large, and so his name takes off in the art world, and he's going to all these extravagant parties and everything, um and but it's his wife who is actually doing the art, and
Okay.
come to find out, he's been slapping his name on everything, and like other, not just her work but other artists, and so he made a career out of ripping people's artwork off,
Okay.
and so it's really interesting. I think it's called Big Eyes.
Okay.
But anyways, so that's kind of the example I think of, is even in a context of a husband and wife, like he was ripping off her artwork and putting
Yeah.
his name on it, and so it's you never know with what artists might be encountering counterfeiting, um versus there's different uses for, like, the technology, or different
Yeah.
interests. So some people are drawn because of
It'd be quite hard to actually forge a original piece of work, especially a traditionally printed one, because like half my work is etchings. So
Mhm.
the plate's been etched, so the line's been enforced into the paper, and you get like a ridge. So you wouldn't be able to replicate that.
Mm.
It'd be very difficult to replicate a traditional etching or a litho print. You'd need such high resolution. Unless you had, if you had a print of a litho, you could photograph it with high res cameras and do it. But the cost involved in that is it won't be worth your effort. I don't think.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Again, there's like the technology resonates in there's certain aspects of the technology that it's like, oh, this is something I could really use. For some people it's counterfeiting, some people it's transparency in transactions. For some people it's able to track value over time. There's a lot of different I guess areas that will draw you to this type of technology. Um, so I with before our time gets away from us, I do want to um, pull up an artwork and let's see if I can do this very smoothly. But I've got some of your pieces pulled up, and you mentioned Punch and
That's probably a good one
Judy,
to look at.
and so let's make sure we can see the screen.
Okay.
This is gonna be the best way, right, to have it
Yeah,
more
probably.
zoomed in? So I'm the first thing that stands out, and then I'm curious to hear your perspectives on um this and interpretation. Is this Bill Gates?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay, perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, I just want to make sure my eyes were reading it properly. Um, uh, Tell us about this piece. What
So we
went
got.
into
So this is
in
the idea of this piece is the first night of lockdown, basically in the UK, and they had a secret party. This is how the story goes outside Parliament, and Punch and Judy has turned up, and it's obviously Boris Johnson, being held by Bill Gates. But no one
Mhm.
knows who. You see, Bill Gates has got his head actually being held up as well, so no one actually
Yeah,
knows who's pulling his strings. People like to think he probably likes to think he's in charge, but I don't think so. Someone else is in charge of that, and he's obviously holding the BBC cameras because he actually gave £6 million to the BBC during lockdown
mm.
to promoting his agenda, and
Oh,
on his
yeah,
little
so right
can you
here,
see
the BBC.
his back? Can you zoom in on his badge? It's ID 2020, which is his program for
This
digital
badge right
ID.
here?
Yeah, ID
Okay.
2020. And there's a conference he was involved in late 2019, I think it was, where they discussed a corona outbreak before it happened. Yeah,
And
back
then
in
is
20.
this the coronavirus,
The World Economic Forum. Obviously, that's Claude. I can't say his name. The head of the Economic Forum. That's him
okay,
there.
okay.
You got the World Bank lady, and all the people around it. You got what's his name? Dressed up as Data. Um,
This is Zuckerberg?
Zuckerberg, yeah, dressed up as
Oh
Data.
my
I like,
goodness, that's awesome.
yeah, but he's recently apologized, isn't he, this week for the American control on Facebook by the U.S. government.
You know,
So,
it's yeah, you're right. We're in such I guess every time could be considered interesting, but yes, like with what is being revealed now, as opposed to in the past. Yeah, it's very very
it was
interesting.
all open then. That was the thing. If you actually if the majority of people had time to step back and look at what was actually happening, most people would be aware of. They're quite open about it. They aren't that secretive. They just rely on the speed of media to override it. So that's basically what's happening here with like the media there with the BBC guys on BBC Breakfast with the angel heads because they can't say anything wrong.
Mhm.
Then you got the diagonally diagonal flooring is Freemasonry. So any especially like old building with diagonal floors
Okay.
sponsored by the Freemasons, especially in London, places like
Oh,
that.
very interesting.
So that's quite yeah. If you walk into a room, it's diagonally onto you. It's Freemasonry money to put
Mhm.
it there.
Very
Um,
interesting. That's something I did not know.
so can you see the tower? sort of floating in the middle there?
Which one are we?
Yes, can you see the tower in the background, like all the little arches?
All the
Can
little
you see that?
arches. Oh, oh, right here. Are you talking about
Yeah,
this? Yeah. Okay.
well, that's the Tower of Babel on the EU poster, which is made by them, where they have. If you
So
go down a bit
interesting.
more, if you go down a bit more, can you
Where am I going?
go down a little bit more?
Okay.
So can you see? Can you go down? There you go. Can you see the? Can you see Greta Thunberg on
Oh,
the
is that?
left-hand side? On the left-hand side,
Oh, yes, over here. Okay.
yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
above her, can you see the square head and the round baby?
Yeah, right. Yep, right here.
Well, that's on the poster of the EU, where basically they talk about the idea of blockheads. So a blockhead, in a
Mm.
political sense, is someone who's already been converted to their way of thinking, but the babies haven't yet. So that's why the babies got
Ah,
around her,
interesting.
and that's an official EU poster,
Huh.
which is unbelievable. So it's all it's
No
all it's
kidding.
all open, and all these politicians here are the ones who were like got caught going to parties or going to a castle. Someone had a castle somewhere like that, and you got Piers Morgan in the middle with his ears and like
Oh, yeah.
he just believed everything they got told.
I mean, even things like toilet paper,
Yeah,
because that was a big deal. I remember
yeah.
when,
You
you
know why
know,
that was though?
yeah, everyone was scrambling to get toilet paper. You
Trying
know,
to get control over their life, and that was the thing with
exactly.
everyone. Yeah, trying to just like we need it. But Greta had
Yeah.
plenty. She's stealing some there.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, I think that the world of crypto Twitter, because I'd say it's largely, especially in the well, I guess that's redundant, but in the world of Web3 and crypto, people are more, I wouldn't say enlightened is the right word, but they're more open to um, seeing the world as it is, or seeing investigating what's going on behind the scenes. And I think that they will find this very interesting, kind of as I described before, where you have this big piece of art, and it's got a lot of things going on, but then being able to zoom in and see someone like Piers Morgan or the toilet paper. It adds this whole extra element to it. So um, yeah, this
Definitely
is
more.
this is
So,
go ahead.
so people in crypto, I just said, the more free-thinking people, the more sort of like you said, open to the idea of because they know the corruption of the current banking system, the sterling or the dollar. So obviously they already made that step away from that safety net, which is quite a big thing to step away from if you've always been in sort of conventional banking.
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they've already
So,
taken that step from seeing that um, printing money nonstop is a bad thing.
yeah,
That there's needs to be that scarcity of currency is also contributes to what a store of value is. And yeah, kind of they're more um, open to exploring kind of what are some good alternative solutions. So, yeah, this is, and a lot of them are kind of, I use the term conspiracy, which in some cases they are, but in some cases that's the reality.
yeah.
Um, but they're more kind of in line in what's happening with the conspiracy theories. And um uh yeah, I mean, I think the lockdowns did lead to a lot of people learning about traditional finance, as well as what's going on in the world of
But it's a bit
crypto.
easier in the US because your banking history is sort of cropped down to like 150 years, basically the same what happened in England, but ours over 1,000 years. So like you had like your really good currency is a colonial script where each state controlled their monetary system
Hmm.
really well before the obviously then you get the greenback dollar. Um, And obviously, then you can still. I think at that point you could still print. You could still get your own silver stamped, couldn't you? To about 1880 something. I think that stopped.
You know that actually better than I do. I couldn't.
Okay, so it's all in. Good. The political history is on. What's his name? Alice in the not the Yellow Brick Road.
Oh,
What's that?
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, that's the whole history of American banking history, all in that
Yeah,
story. But
that's
yeah,
so.
it's
Yeah,
interesting.
so this is where you're seeing the limitation of my brain versus
Oh, I see.
the the memory
So
of
yeah, they
yours.
changed it in the film. It's interesting. They changed the shoes from the silver shoe, which was the original one, to represent the silver standard of when you can mint your own currency. If you in America, you could have your own silver. You could go to mint and get it done for free into dollars.
Mhm.
That was stopped in 1880, whenever it was. But in the film, they
Really,
changed
so
it to
that's what the Wizard of Oz was saying. Like that's one of the underlying.
the whole
Um,
thing is American history of banking.
wow,
It's written by,
that's
I can't
so
remember the chap's
interesting.
name, but it was in the news. He was an illustrator, an artist, and it was published in the newspaper to start with, basically going through the whole history of the American banking being
That's
taken over by the
fascinating.
European bankers. So, like, turn of the century, the U.S. press was still quite free. So, like, the classic one is when first Rockefeller died. David Rockefeller the first? I think so. So when he died, they wouldn't
Yeah,
release he wouldn't
I think
release his will.
John D. Rockefeller, or was he
Yeah,
the
that's right.
son? Yeah. Okay.
So they wouldn't release his will. So the press fought for 2 years to get it released, and when they got it released, they actually published it, and he only actually owned 1% of his shares. The rest was European Rothschilds who owned it.
Hmm.
So they owned the whole lot. So it's
Wow.
all these families all like grabbing for power and stuff. But yeah, it's interesting. The American, well, European banking history is really interesting as well. And obviously, crypto fits sort of like separates themselves from that, but they're trying so hard to lock it down. It's unbelievable. Which you obviously
Hmm.
they would do because it's freedom when you got proper transaction of goods.
Yeah, and yeah, when you're in possession of the assets, um,
Yeah,
and you have the kind of self sovereign um, method of transactions, and man,
they've got
I'm that's fascinating about because I know that like movies, TV shows, they have that like there's a um uh you know intent with whatever their the creative process, and there's a message that they're trying to share, um and sometimes in my simple mind, I will see something like, oh, that's a great story, but then it's so interesting learning later, though, this was the motive, or this is what um where this story derived, and this is the message that it's saying. That's fascinating
well,
to me.
to be quick, another funny one is the Monopoly board game. You know why that was invented?
No, tell me.
So that was I think it was an American Mormon who invented it to show the corruption of the capitalist system. You could never win. The bank would always win.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
And now everyone plays it to learn how it works.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I
funny.
love it. No, you know what? I could probably I would love to hear so many more examples. I want to be cognizant of our time, and um make sure that we don't run over, because I'm very grateful that you've set this time aside to talk with us, and hopefully the audience has gained some more insight into who the artist is that's um, creating these pieces, and um, I want to always leave some time for kind of closing thoughts. If there's anything that maybe we haven't discussed that you would like to address, or comments you have, I'm actually going to turn our ticker on, so that is if you want to view David's work more, this is where you can go. Um, David, the floor is open for you to take you know take it in any direction you want, as far as things that we've left off, areas that you want to touch on.
Well, what I can say is like we were just talking now. You know how I was jumping from say, Monopoly to sort of Rockefellers to whoever. That's basically how my brain works. I got all this information. I can pull it all into one place to make I guess to make the point. So history is sort of it's repeated itself every 25 years. Even my political box set, which I've been doing since 2009, the first drawing was actually the very first drawing for the series was the swine flu pandemic. And in there, I actually wrote even Bill Gates at that point was saying that we didn't do a very good job. We need to try again in 10 years. That's a direct quote from him in 2009 or 2010, I think that was. And so it's even then it just repeats itself, and that's only a 10-year, 15 years been going for that now. But I think political history it repeats itself pretty much just on a cycle. So the drawings will come around again, I guess, eventually.
Yeah, everything will operate in cycles. The markets, the political world, even empires. You see that
Yeah,
similar cycle of
it's just the best way. People get really worried about like these people having so much power, but it's just a seesaw effect. So when one gets power, and it just bounces back the other way. So it's just I won't worry about too much about the ruling elite, particularly. They it had to balance out. History shows it does. Like you said, like empires have fallen, like much bigger empires than what we have today. In any people control anyway. Like the British Empire is fairly big, wasn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was it was. Um, w- uh, is there any sort of like kind of in wrapping up? Is there any sort of things that people that are maybe following your artwork that have been following your artwork or are now as a result of this video or a purchase on the marketplace now following your artwork, is there any like can you give us a sneak peek of maybe what's coming or any pieces that you're working on that will be released, anything like that, any sort of alpha?
Yeah, well, obviously I still got one or two drawings to do for the Punch and Judy series. So I wanted a really old court because I didn't want the High Court of London to do it because they're a bit corrupt. It's actually only been going since 1880, I think, the High Court. So I just googled what is the oldest court in England, and it happened to be in my father's hometown of Wordsworth in Derbyshire, set up in 1254 for the by the king to control to make laws for the mining rights because there's a lot of lead mining around there and stuff like that. So that's going to be the court case, the court hall for my trial of all these corrupt politicians in my series. There's only a little building, but I thought it was quite nice to use something which is like 1200 is quite old, isn't it, for an active
Yeah,
court?
that's incredibly old. We don't have, being in America, we don't have anything that's over like 250, 300 years old. So yeah, it's that's one thing. Being we were in Lisbon for a conference not too long ago, and the thing me as an American see like that I'm observing is the streets are old. Like that, like this is what a city looks like that's been here for, and I don't know how long Lisbon's been around.
Yeah, it's quite old.
But this is something that's hundreds of years old versus you know a couple hundred. So there's a whole different perspective on like the European side with an empire that was around for a lot, has been around a lot longer period of time than say the U.S. So yeah,
Well, the US is based on English law, so you got a strong grounding
mhm.
compared to the European system, which is the European system very strange. They like to make laws, so I think the average European breaks 25 laws a day because you just don't know what the laws are. There's just so many of them. Where in England we use common sense, the common law, so based on like we only make a law when we think we need to make one. So there's a lot less laws, and it
Yeah.
makes more sense. And obviously your system is built on, so you're like a Second Amendment, and so we have the Bill of Rights here, your Bill of Rights based on our Bill of Rights.
Mhm.
So we have very similar laws. Obviously statute law takes it away slightly over here. We have less freedoms in the UK than you do in America because the way your constitution is written.
Hmm.
But we never had a court case actually to do the conflict between the common and the statute law either in the UK, where you have in 1930, so in America, I can't remember the case law on it, but so that's never been really discussed over here in the UK. We may do shortly with all the what's going on at the moment with this sort of two-tier policing. What's happening here is not it's not very not working very well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, David, we're at time, and I want to again respect the time that you've given to us. I'm incredibly grateful that you took the step to join us for this
That's
conversation, and it was really good to meet you and talk through your artwork. For the audience, you can see in the little ticker below, this is where you can go to find David's artwork. It's app.galileoprotocol.io. David, are you anywhere on like Twitter, or what's if someone wants
yeah,
to
well,
like
I am
connect with
actually.
you?
My name's quite rare, so just type in David Borrington, you'll find me. That's
Okay,
the best.
okay. So that's
Yeah,
simple. Then yeah, audience, feel free to connect with David. Um, if you enjoyed kind of the Punch and Judy, there's a lot more where that came from, and encourage y'all to go down the rabbit hole, and
yeah.
then learn some more about kind of the inner workings of David's artwork. So
Or
um,
mine.
on yeah, exactly. On behalf of Galileo Protocol, I am grateful to you, David, for the time that you've spent with us this morning, or I guess it's for you afternoon. Um, and this is fun. I feel like we could do another hour segment of
Me
just
too.
learning about kind of like the story behind other movies and
Yeah,
books and things of that nature. But maybe we'll do that again in the future. But
yeah.
thanks for the time, David, and thanks to everyone that is tuning in. We'll be back. I don't know about next week, but we'll be back soon with another piece of the Luxury Live series. So thanks, David. Appreciate the time, and audience. Y'all have a great day.